This computer.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, it says it's recording, so I think it's all set.
That's
All right, I'm gonna let everybody in. Probably take a couple minutes.
The end is a key thing here. Because if you are in.
Okay. What are you doing right now?
Just. You know.
Well, you gotta waste it down.
Nah.
Go on. Oh, today's one. No.
Are we good to go, Rebecca?
I believe so, yep, Kate.
All right. Yeah.
And your problem is.
All right.
All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the annual alcohol seminar. Just to introduce myself, I am Tommy McCarthy. I am a lieutenant with the Framingham Police Department, currently assigned to the licensing division. My responsibilities include alcohol compliance. Just to let you know some of the other stuff I do in case you have any police-related questions regarding the other things. I also handle the sex offender compliance, firearms, licensing, taxis, constables, and oversee the field training program for new officers. So if there's anything that comes up, in general, you can contact me regarding those issues. So I'm going to put my info on the chat screen, and I will be taking attendance because you guys do get credit if there is an issue at the establishment. That does play into what the resolution will be. So in the event you're calling in on a cell phone, or I don't know what establishment you're from, I will be calling you afterwards to make sure you get credit for it. So basically the program, the mayor is going to open up with a few words, and then the ABCC and the attorneys are going to talk about most of the presentation. I will be jumping in to answer any police related questions and closing it out with some issues that I see that you guys should be aware of. And basically my job is to keep you in compliance and protect your livelihood so you guys can stay in business. So I'd like to open up to the mayor for a few opening remarks.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to City of Framingham Alcohol License Seminar. I thank you all for attending, and I especially want to thank those people from the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission for attending and helping us with this seminar. With us, we have the chair of the Control Commission, the executive director, the deputy executive director, and the associate general counsel. So thank you all for joining us and helping to educate our license holders. As you know, this is a very important annual meeting that we hold. It helps us to reinforce state and local regulations concerning the sale of alcohol. And it also helps us to provide you with updates to the changes in rules and regulations that are taking place throughout the year. So once again, I thank you. I hope you have a very informative and successful seminar this morning, and I'll be available to answer any questions at a later date. Thank you very much, and I'll turn it back to you, Lieutenant.
I'll turn it over to Attorney Fallon and the ABCC to start the presentation.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Good morning, everyone. I'm Catherine Fallon. I'm the city solicitor for the city of Framingham, and I'm welcoming today all of the individuals that the mayor just mentioned from the ABCC. And we'd like to actually welcome the chair, Jean Lorizio, to say a few words.
Thank you, Attorney Fallon, and thank you, Mayor Sisitsky and Lieutenant McCarthy. Good morning, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be able to be with all of these departments here in one room with the licensees. And thank you for including us and for your help in putting this all together. As the mayor said and Lieutenant McCarthy said, our hope is that we can provide some information today, information to the licensees having to do with compliance and information about laws and regulations, whether it be the Alcoholic Beverages Control Commission's regulations or local regulations. And the goal, I think, of all of us here today is for businesses to be successful. So I know our team here has put together a great presentation. And with that, I'll turn it back to Attorney Fallon for Executive Director Sacramone to begin. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And we really appreciate you being here and joining us and helping us through this presentation and for your team helping us as well to prepare and help train our licensees. I also wanted to add that from our staff in the legal department is Attorney Bridget Bradley, and she's also our first assistant city solicitor, and will be hi Bridget, and will be all jumping in to contribute to this presentation. And also just to remind you, any of the licensees, if you have questions, to put them in the chat and we'll try to address those either as we go along or at a Q&A at the end. And so with that, we have a presentation that we've prepared for you that will be moving along with the executive director and the associate general counsel of the ABCC participating, as well as me. So we're going to move along to our first slide, which will be, I'll turn it over to Mr. Sacramone and Attorney Gill.
Well, good morning, everyone. I thank everyone for taking their time today to join the seminar. As you know, this was our original association with a municipality, which was at that time was the town of Framingham, where we got together and we had this idea of taking training right down to the licensees, because all the training in the past was done with the local boards, the police departments, the city solicitors, legal department. And then we had an idea, let's bring it right down to the stakeholders. And we started this program over 4 years ago with Framingham, and it's been a forerunner for the state. There's been numerous other municipalities that have now jumped on board with this program. About the main reason or the main idea of the program is licensee compliance. And that's what we're about. We want you to be successful. We don't want to see you get in trouble. So this is what today is about. If you have questions, just as Attorney Fallon said, put them right into the chat. We will answer questions as we go along, so you don't have to wait to the end. I have my entire team here with me, my Deputy Executive Director, Ryan Melville, which will be assisting with the presentation, along with our Associate General Counsel, Kyle Gill, and along with Attorney Fallon and her team, and of course, Lieutenant McCarthy. At this point in time, I want to thank Lieutenant McCarthy and also Attorney Fallon for all the effort they put in to continue moving this process forward. Attorney Fallon put the whole presentation together after talking about our whole ideas that Lieutenant McCarthy and I had, and so the PowerPoint it was a great job done by Attorney Fallon. So I'd like to move to page 3 of the presentation, and we can kick off. Now, what we're going to talk about today is licensing and compliance. One thing to always remember, a license is a privilege. All right. It's not a right. All right. And our Associate General Counsel, Kyle Gill, always speaks about this. Along with a privilege comes responsibilities. And the responsibilities are very simple to follow. We have rules, regulations, statutes. Framingham has a great policy and procedure, informational guide they have. They do this training. It's all there to help you to be successful. So our goal today is, how do we make you successful? We're going to give you all the tools here between the city of Framingham and the ABC to stay successful. What are the most common errors we see from a licensee? And you will see a list of them on this page in front of you. All right. Once your license is approved, all right, under Chapter 138, the Liquor Control Act, any changes to any part of the license, from ownership to description of premises, to individuals as officers and directors and so forth, financial loans or where pledges are involved, all need to be approved by the local board, which is Framingham and the ABC. So here in front of us is a list of issues that we always see. All right, and people don't realize how important it is that all of these transactions are approved by the local board, because we have laws and we have statutes, and there are statutory disqualifications for people who have felony convictions. There are issues with that need to be following, guidelines need to be followed when you're doing an alteration of premises and so forth. And also, if people change any type of their corporation, going from a corporation to an LLC, a sole proprietor to a corporation, all of those items need to be approved. So if you look on the screen right now, there are a number of issues we always see. Change of ownership. All right, if you are selling your license, you are responsible for that license until the day it transfers. All right, so if you're the present owner, we classify you as the seller. You can just not sell your license, give the key to someone else in the facility, and they start running it until the three-step approval occurs, which is approval of the local board, approval of the ABC, and then also the local licensing authority actually issues you a license in the name of the buyer. Then your responsibility is stepped aside. During that process, you must continue to run your license, control the alcohol, control all the revenue coming in and out. You cannot surrender any of that authority. We see that a lot. As soon as people sign the PNS, they give the keys to the buyer. That is not part of the statute. You cannot do that. All right, so that is prohibited until the three-step approval is done. Transfer of stock, bringing in new owners or partners. You just can't bring them in without getting approval. Change a corporate name, change a DBA, all of those items need to be approved through the local board. And how is this done? Through an amendment application. Later in the process, we're going to do what we call, part of our training is our website navigation. And my deputy executive director, Ryan Melville, is going to walk you through where to find these amendment applications and all the transactions and how easy it is to use our website to make it work. Also, if you see renovations to a premises, you need to get approval of that. If you're expanding or you're decreasing or you are choosing to move next door to expand the size of your premises, you cannot sell alcohol in that area or store alcohol in that area until it's been approved through the three-step procedure process. The exact same thing talks about changing hours. If you have assigned hours that have been approved, you just cannot decide to open later without permission from the local board. Same thing with change of location, as we talked about earlier. The other item is also change of manager. One thing I want licensees to remember, the city of Framingham has a very, very distinct directive as far as managers go, as far as assistant managers go, so that the licensed premises is always under management control at all times. That is very good. Very few other cities and towns have that. All right, so Framingham is already ahead of the game on this. One of the key things to remember is a licensed manager cannot hold the license hostage. For instance, if a manager decides to quit and walk away, you do not have to close your licensed premises. What you want to do is do your due diligence immediately to try to find a new manager. In the meantime, you want to notify the Framingham board that whatever it was, either they quit, you dismiss them, that this person is no longer our manager. We are looking for a person to replace them. Be upfront with the local board. Let them know you have an assistant manager that the local boards are requiring to be approved in advance, so that person can jump into that role until you find it. Any person that has been approved, officer, director, shareholder, or LLC member or LLC manager, can have the right to fill that position temporarily until you find someone. So you want to communicate very closely with the local board when there is a change of manager. So remember, a manager does not own the license. They are in charge of controlling the license, but they cannot hold you hostage as an owner if they decide to leave. So it's very, very important you do your due diligence and move forward with finding a manager, but also communication with the local board. Catherine, anything else you want to add to that before we jump to the next slide?
No, that's great. I think that there are some questions when a manager leaves or what does a licensee do? And I think you've addressed those perfectly. Later on down the line, well, we have a slide relating to the licensee's obligation to ID the manager and assistant manager and cards that these Framingham rules have in place that we can go over. But I think you covered everything that we see that comes up as an issue.
Very good. Let's move to the next slide. All right. Updates to outdoor patios and seating. As everyone knows, over the last 2.5 years with the terrible pandemic we had, and we understand and we feel for what licensees went through. And I know a lot of licensees have survived the pandemic, a lot have not. So as you know, working with the legislators, the House, the Senate, and also the governor, we, along with the ABC Commission, have proposed guidelines and temporary suspensions of orders. As everyone knows, the ABC is under the Treasury, and Treasurer Goldberg is the oversight of the ABC. Between Treasurer Goldberg and at that time, Governor Baker, the Senate President, and the Speaker of the House, they all got together with their committees, and we made suggestions and the legislators approved changes. And one of them was a suspension of the 3-step approval process to move to outdoor seating. And as you know, what that did was it saved time. It allowed local boards to have total control as long as licensees follow the guidelines that were set forth by the ABC Commission. And Framingham was very, very successful at that. And as you know, that temporary order suspending the 3-step approval process is valid right now through April 1st of 2023. So I cannot tell you at this time if it's going to be extended. All right, hopefully it will be, because there's still, the issue I have is a lot of these smaller towns that only have a once-a-year town meeting need to straighten out a lot of issues in reference to zoning, wastewater runoff. So it's a lot going on. But as it stands right now, the temporary extension is going to be allowed through April 1st. If it is extended, we will get advisories right out to the city of Framingham, and they'll let you know on that. In the meantime, if outdoor seating was successful for you and you can be in compliance with the guidelines of the ABC and compliance of the guidelines of the city of Framingham, get your application in now for permanent approval. Get it in so you can go do the 3-step approval, which is filling out an alteration of premises application, having a hearing and alerting the abutters, having it approved by the local board, approved by the ABC, then the local board will issue you an amended license with the new description. Get on that now, because as you know, at this point in time, there's not a lot of outdoor seating going on as we are speaking, but along with April, when the weather starts getting right, you want to have it done so you can be able to open in April. You don't want to wait till April 1st, because by the time you get through the local board, could be 4 weeks, and then to the ABC, you're talking 6 to 8 weeks. So now you're talking June to get your outdoor seating. Start now, get to the local board, get your right to occupy those premises, because you have to extend your lease if it's private property, or if you're using city or town property, you have to get the right to be on that, and also apply to both guidelines of the city of Framingham and the ABC. One key thing to remember, if you go to our website under advisories, there's a advisory the commission put out, and we simplified the process of allowing outdoor seating. All right. And there is contiguous outdoor seating and there's non-contiguous outside seating guidelines. You want to review through those before you submit your application to the local board. You want to make sure you meet those requirements. All right. And also other things that people need to remember. When you're moving outdoors, you must maintain control of that premises at all times while alcohol is being served. So if you do not have a clear visual directive or visual effect of what's going on outside, you may put in your policies and procedures that you want to have a manager out there at all times when alcohol is being served. If you can see control from the inside, it's different. You want to be able to have all those questions and procedures in place before you appear in front of the local board, because Framingham is going to ask you those questions. How are you going to control it? And then also you must remember your surroundings. Some licensed premises are in neighborhoods. All right, you must respect the neighborhoods, and you must remember how to create control of the neighborhoods and your hours of operation. You may get an extension from the local board, but you may not get an extension to full closing time. They may have you, they may have your outdoor seating closed at 11 p.m. because of the environment you're in. So all of those you want to have all prepared and make sure you have your full supervisory and control program in place for them. Catherine, anything else you'd like to add to that?
Just to add to that too, just to make sure that the licensee is ensuring review by the fire department, by the building commissioner. It's likely that if the patio or outdoor service was already approved, there was some process that was undertaken prior to the board approving it. But to make sure if there's an application to amend or extend that or make it permanent, to go through that same process, it's always better to have the enforcement officials review and vet that ahead of time before you come to the board.
Very good.
There
We'll
was a
move to the-
hand up too, Mr. Sacramone, but I'm not sure if that, I saw the note, but I can't see the chat from right now, so I don't know if there was a hand raised. No.
Howie, if that person would like to put the question into the chat, we'll get to it anytime. Please feel free.
Moving on. Should we move on?
Yes, let's move on to the next slide.
Right.
All right, purchasing of alcohol from authorized sources. What does this mean? It's very simple. In Massachusetts, under Chapter 138, it requires that a licensee, which you are, either you are a restaurant, a club, a hotel, a package store, a big box store, a supermarket, a gas station, anyone that is licensed, you only can buy from authorized sources. What is an authorized source? It is a Massachusetts wholesaler, manufacturer, distributor. You cannot go out of state because you saw a better deal in Rhode Island to buy Budweiser beer, or you cannot go to New Hampshire or Connecticut to buy Tito's vodka because there's a better sale. Once you leave the state and you purchase out of there, that is what we refer to as bootlegging. You bring an unauthorized alcohol into the state. That is a very, very serious violation that the commission and the local board strongly enforces. Remember one thing. The reason why these procedures are in place is to protect the consumer. If you are buying alcohol, as what we refer to on the black market or pirated alcohol, and it says Johnny Walker Black on it, are you sure it's Johnny Walker Black in that bottle? If anybody saw what happened 2 years ago in the Caribbean, there was pirated alcohol with different names of alcohol in it, which it was not. And I think 7 people end up perishing on that because of the product was deadly that was inside the bottle. So number one, it's public safety is what you are responsible for. You are responsible for your customers. So what you are giving them, you want to make sure you're getting from authorized sources. Number two is we work very, very closely with the wholesalers and the manufacturers. And by what I mean working with them, we hold them to the same standards that we hold to you. They only can buy from authorized sources. So the whole chain of product is gone through the entire consumer protection process. That's what we want everybody to understand. And I also want to clarify, when you go to purchase from someone, when you're dealing with a wholesaler, they have a wholesaler license. You know someone has a manufacturing license. You as a package store or a restaurant, you cannot go to BJ's. You cannot go to Sam's store. You cannot go to Costco and purchase alcohol for them. They are not a wholesaler. They are a package store, just like any other package store is. They're allowed to sell to consumers. They cannot sell to other licensees. Does everybody understand that? So if you're a retail licensee, either being a package store under Section 15 or under Section 12 on-premise consumption, either being a hotel, a club, a bar, a lounge, whatever terminology you want to use, you only can buy from licensed wholesalers or manufacturers. In-state only, and I refer that as Massachusetts manufacturers, Massachusetts wholesalers. Now, If you run out of a product, can you run down to the package store and get it? No, that is not allowed. Even though, do we go out looking for that? No, we don't. But I want to tell everybody on notice is if the police department is doing their regular enforcement and they see a person go in and buy 3 bottles of Tito Vodka and take it back to their bar, they're going to charge you for buying from an unauthorized source. Same thing with an ABC investigator. So it's very, very important that remember, this is there to protect all. It's also very important that you buy from authorized sources. Does anybody have any questions on that before we move on? Catherine?
Oh, this was, I believe you covered this next
this is-
slide. but-
This is great because this is an addition on that. There is some type of fallacy going on out there that if you own 2 restaurants or you own 2 package stores, you could transfer alcohol back and forth between those 2 entities because it's the same owner. That is false. That is totally prohibited under Chapter 138. And basically what this means is this, is if you have 2 restaurants in Framingham and you decide to transfer a case of Tito's Vodka to your other restaurant, you have committed a double violation. What I mean by that is the person who is transferring it, all right, is acting as a wholesaler. That's a violation of the Chapter 138. And then your other restaurant who is receiving it is buying from an unauthorized source. So you cannot transfer alcohol between each of the entities. So it's very, very important that you remember that exact same thing goes as package stores. You cannot be shipping 10 cases of Budweiser to one package store and 10 cases to another if you own multiple package stores. Each license is site specific. A license and all the alcohol is delivered to that one location, must stay in that one location. It only can be sold to consumers. All right, it cannot be sold to other licensees. So it's very important that you remember there's a fallacy out there that you could transfer back and forth. And number 2, we're out here protecting you on that too. If you get audited by the DOI in the store that you're bringing all the alcohol into, you're going to have a problem matching up your order with them because they're going to say, okay, you received 500 cases of Budweiser throughout the year. So if you sold those 500 cases, you would have made this. Your records do not show that. So you're going to end up with a more extensive audit. That's number 1 there. And number 2, it's prohibited by the law to be selling or transferring alcohol between licensed premises. Catherine?
All set.
All right, we can move to the next. All right, next thing is delivery of alcohol. All right, before the pandemic, we had, this was a growing part of the business. But during the pandemic, it doubled 300, then it doubled another 300, almost 600%. It went over in the last 2.5 years with delivery. So basically what, under Chapter 138, all right, we'll take, first of all, package stores, Section 15, off-premise consumptions. Those are your regular package stores, your big box stores like Costco, BJ, Sam's Club. Also, any type of convenience store, gas station has a liquor license. You are classified as a Section 15, means all of your alcohol has to be sold for off-premise consumption, not for on-premise consumption. You are allowed under the law to get a Chapter 138, Section 22 transportation permit, and you can deliver to anywhere in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So if you get that transportation permit, you can deliver anywhere in Framingham, you can go to Needham, you can go to Boston. You have the right to deliver. It's $150 license. All right. It's actually called the transportation permit, and it's valid for the entire calendar year from January 1st through December 31st. This gives you the authorization to take alcohol from your premises and deliver it to a consumer's home or deliver it to an office. So this gives you the right to do it. Now, when dealing with this, the responsibility of the brick and mortar licensee extends to the front door of that home when you're delivering to. So when someone comes into your store, you're checking IDs, you're making sure that that person is 21 years or older on it. You're selling them the alcohol. When you're delivering alcohol, the same rules apply. It is your responsibility to make sure alcohol is not delivered to any individual under the age of 21. And to let you know, and Kyle will talk about this later on when he talks about compliance checks, the local police department and the ABC are doing compliance checks of delivery companies to homes. So if you are not checking IDs, you'll be charged the exact same way if a minor ends up in possession of it. And just to let you know how many colleges we have in Massachusetts. The college students have figured out what package stores don't check IDs with deliveries, and those are the ones that they've been ordering from. So we don't want to see you jeopardize your license. And then remember what happens, all the problems that happens when underage individuals begin to consume alcohol. We end up with altercations, sexual assaults. We end up with people driving intoxicated, and then accidents and deaths happen out of this. And any good attorney is gonna figure out where the alcohol come, and then the suit's gonna work all the way back down the line. Protect yourselves. Just like you protect yourself at the register when you check an ID, make sure your delivery people are trained that they're checking IDs. And there's many different ways to do them. You can work with your local police department, or you can work with alcohol training programs, the proper way to do it, but it's your responsibility. As we said, part of the privilege of a license is to follow what the guidelines say. And the reason why I took a little extra time on this, we're seeing a lot of problems out there with IDs being checked from delivery companies. And a lot of this is ranging from package stores. Probably about 99% of the issues come from Section 15 deliveries. Now, you can get a delivery permit yourself. You also can hire a third-party delivery service like Uber, DoorDash, et cetera, down the line. They're called an express transportation company. All right. And you're allowed to deal with them. You want to make sure you follow the first 3 steps all the time. Make sure if you're hiring a company, number one, that they have a license. And it's very simple. You ask them to see their Massachusetts express transportation license, and it says right on it. It talks about the name of the license, which is a Section 22 express transportation license. It states the company name on it, and it states the year that it's active for. You want to make sure that you see that license before you engage with them. Now you're protecting yourself. Number 2, you want to make sure that they have ID procedures in place for checking, because you're giving them the responsibility of delivering your alcohol. You want to make sure that you see those procedures, they're in place, IDs are being checked. And you can require additional conditions that you want them to follow to protect yourself. And then, of course, third, do an auditing system or proof that they are doing this. Ask them to submit you records if they're taking pictures. Some delivery companies take pictures of the ID, some scan them, there's a record of them. You want to make sure you're protecting it. All of that onus falls on you because you are hiring these people to deliver alcohol for you. So that's very, very important that everybody realize that. Everybody is in the delivery business now. BJ's is delivering alcohol, Costco's delivering alcohol, convenience stores, gas stations, and regular package stores. And there are numerous companies. Before the pandemic, we had probably around 180 what we call express transportation companies. 90% of them were trucking companies like Roadway and Eagle, delivering large amounts of alcohol from out-of-state wholesalers to in-state, out-of-state manufacturers to in-state wholesalers. Then after the pandemic, we're in now, I think, give or take, we're around 220 express transportation companies, which are all, the whole new part of that business is delivered directly to consumers. So it's important that you make sure you protect yourself. That is one of the biggest failures that we're seeing out there, is the delivery of alcohol to minors. So just to let everyone know, and Kyle will be telling you this, we are doing compliance checks on that. Any questions on that before I move to the next part of delivery? Catherine?
No, all set.
All right, going to the next part of delivery. As you know, as we talked about earlier, working with Treasurer Goldberg and Governor Baker in the legislatures, we also created another exemption, which was allowing Section 12s, which is on-premise consumption, also Section 19, pharmacies pouring permits. Anyone that served food or served a meal, we gave you the ability to serve alcohol to go and to allow for delivery. So basically how it works for any Section 12 on-premise, any Section 19 pharmacies licensee is if you are allowed to sell certain quantities of alcohol, as long as you're serving it with a meal. And that is going to be allowed through April 1st of 2023. The exact same thing as I stated earlier about the extension of outdoor seating. It's scheduled to end. Could it be extended? It could be, but I don't have that answer right now. But it's important right now that you understand you're allowed as a Section 12 or a Section 19 to sell alcohol to go either by delivering it or for pickup as long as you have a meal. So with each meal, you're allowed to give up to 194 ounces of malt beverages or beer. You're allowed to give 1 to 1.5 liters of wine and cider. And also you're allowed to sell 64 ounces of mixed drinks in a sealed container with each meal. So it's important, you cannot just sell the alcohol without a meal. There has to be a meal. Along with the invoice, you have to show that the meal is on that invoice to allow you to qualify. Now, you can hire a third-party carrier, just like the Section 15s do, DoorDash, Uber, et cetera, down the line. You want to make sure the same rules follow, that they are licensed, that they have procedures checking ID and you're auditing them. You want to make sure that takes place. Also, the ABC Commission has also extended a waiver. They're not requiring a Section 12 licensee. If you are delivering for yourself, you are not required at this point in time till April 1st to have a transportation license. You can use your vehicle or one of your employees' vehicles as long as you're delivering directly from the licensee. You cannot use a third-party carrier. You're not required to have a transportation permit. All right, because when the commission looked at this, there was created more hardship on the restaurants, really took a beating during this and on-premise consumption. So this was a way to give back and help you to save on costs. So it's important to remember is the same rules apply at when someone comes in to order a drink sitting at your bar or sitting at a table in your restaurant, as they do when you're delivering it to their front door. You have to make sure that they're of the age of 21 or older. The same rules apply if they're intoxicated, or if your delivery driver doesn't feel that the ID is right, they have the discretion not to deliver, and you don't have to worry about getting sued for discrimination. Any licensee has the right not to sell to anyone if you feel that person is intoxicated or the ID is not correct, and also you feel that there may be some type of fraudulent going on, or there were people that are underage. You have all the right to refuse that sale. And I know Framingham has stricter rules, which are really great about if you think you have a fraudulent ID about confiscating all that, that is great. And working with the police immediately, that's good teamwork together. And that's what you want to stop. We have a lot of colleges in the area. There's a lot of phony IDs going on. Use your discretion to, if you think there's something wrong there, not make the sale. Catherine?
Oh, great.
Any other questions? All right, if we move to the.
I can't actually see the chat if any hands are raised, so I think, can you see that?
I can't see the chat either.
All right, so we're gonna have to let Rebecca alert us if someone has a question. All right, so we're moving on to compliance.
Yes, all right. Now I'm going to turn this over, this part of it, to Lieutenant
I'm
McCarthy.
sorry, let me just, there is a, I think, a hand raised. Rebecca, would you mind reading us what the question is? Neither one of us can see it.
Hey, Catherine, I just wanted to mention that chat, I think, is disabled on the meeting, so none of us are able to actually type anything into the chat.
No wonder there's no questions. All right, thank you for letting us know. All right, let,
So anybody that had a question earlier, hopefully we'll allow you to be able to get into the chat. We'll answer all those at the end or whatever you want to do. We'll make sure we cover your questions. So hopefully we'll get you the function disabled so you'll be able to use it.
oh. Sorry, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that is, but we'll see while we're moving along if we can troubleshoot that.
Oh, if I can jump in on that. So I guess due to some local changes, the chat's been disabled for all city meetings apparently. So we'll just have to do the, if there's any questions, people can use their voice to ask questions, but there's not going to be any chat
Okay.
out of our jurisdiction. So
Sorry about that, but folks, if you're attending and you have a question, if you don't mind unmuting and chime in, I guess at the point that you need to chime in. How's that?
I hear silence right now, so we'll move on to the next slide. All right, the next slide is about compliance checks. I'm going to turn this over to Lieutenant McCarthy and also my Associate General Counsel, Kyle Gill. Let me give you a little background about Kyle Gill. Kyle Gill is our Associate General Counsel. He is also the prosecutor for the Investigation and Enforcement Division. So if you end up with a violation, that's the person you're going to be appearing against in front of the ABC Commission. Kyle takes his job very serious. He knows the law inside and out. Hopefully, none of you meet Kyle in person on a Zoom with the ABC or in person at a hearing, but I want to turn it over to Kyle and Lieutenant McCarthy.
Thank you, Ralph. Thank you, everyone. As Ralph mentioned, my name is Kyle Gill and I'm Associate General Counsel at the ABCC. And as he mentioned, if you haven't met me before or spoken to me before, it might be a good thing, as my main role is I do prosecute all of the ABCC Enforcement Division violations. And one of our types of violations that we come across every year is compliance checks. Might not be a surprise, but during 2020 and 2021, they did slow for us. It wasn't the best idea necessarily to send our underage operatives into establishments at that time, but I can tell you in 2022, we started right where we left off with them. And again, we did already put advertisement out for 2023 that the ABCC will be performing compliance checks statewide. And that's at both on-premise establishments, Section 12s, restaurants, clubs, as well as Section 15 package stores, grocery stores, where people will purchase for off-premises consumption. Passing a compliance check with the ABCC is easy. All you have to do is ask for an identification. If our underage operative is asked for identification, they leave the store. That's what they're trained to do, and you will have passed. And I can say that in 2022, I did not see Framingham as a city or town as anywhere that the ABCC tested. So I think there's a good chance in 2023 that an ABCC investigator with an underage operative will be testing your store, your business, and I hope you pass. I'm giving you a warning now that there's a good chance they will happen this year in Framingham from the ABCC. In addition, I know Ralph mentioned earlier, compliance checks, we are testing third-party delivery companies such as Uber Eats, DoorDash, GoPuff. So if you do hire one of those transportation companies, we will test them as well. As Ralph mentioned, underage, especially college students, have figured out that some of these companies aren't always the best at testing, checking IDs. So if you do hire them, make sure you vet them, make sure you do know their policies and procedures, and make sure you're comfortable with the arrangement. Lieutenant McCarthy, do you have anything to add for Framingham?
yeah, so I can just tell you, so we do compliance checks on a regular basis. Some a little less involved than this. For example, we go by the establishments at closing time, make sure all the patrons are off site. We do have officers that go in, we check and verify that people have the appropriate training, et cetera. We do those, pretty much every weekend. The officers on the road do that. In terms of the annual compliance check, I do that. I believe there were about 84 establishments. I drove around to each and every one and attempted to send my underage operative into those stores. So we do that every year. We did take a break for COVID, same as ABCC, but we did that last year. We did the same thing this year, and almost everyone passed. There were a couple of violations, but we do the same procedure. The operative goes in. If you ask him for ID, he says, "Oh, I'll go get it," out in the car, and he doesn't come back and he passed. That's all you have to do is ask for ID. It's pretty simple. So we encourage everyone to ID everyone, and then you won't have an issue.
Thank you, Lieutenant McCarthy. Another thing I just wanted to add from the ABC's perspective is these compliance checks are meant to be an educational tool. I hear our commission say it all the time, that they are a test. At the end of the day, there isn't an underage putting themselves in danger. They are working with law enforcement. But it obviously is important to make sure everybody is accountable and doing the right thing with regard to checking the IDs. Ralph, do you have anything to add?
Nope, all set. Catherine,
All set.
next slide.
Okay. So as many may know, there are 6 acceptable forms of ID. And what I mean by acceptable is that if a licensee receives one of these types of ID, they're allowed to reasonably rely on it. That if it's that person that they're looking at before them, if it's a mass driver's license, a mass liquor ID card, a mass ID card, a passport card, or a military card, if a person gives you one of those and it looks like that person, you can reasonably rely on that. Even this person ends up being underage, you have a defense. You can go to a hearing in front of the local board in Framingham or to the ABCC and say, maybe the person gave their older brother's ID or their older sister's ID, and it looked like them. You articulate well in front of Framingham or the ABCC that the person before me, who was 19 years old, they looked like the 21-year-old who ended up being their older brother. They had the same height, same color hair, same eyes, same color eyes, and I believed it was that person, and I relied on that identification. That you very well may be successful in that defense, and perhaps Framingham finds no violation. The ABCC could find no violation with regard to that. Was one glaring, obviously missing ID out of those 6, and that's an out-of-state license. If that same scenario happens with an out-of-state license, it's a violation. It's a strict liability. You cannot use the reasonable reliance defense when it comes to an out-of-state ID. As you recall, on the ballot question that was most recent in 2022, they did try to add that, but that did not pass. So still, as it is today, you take out-of-state IDs at your own risk. Now, should you not take out-of-state IDs? That's a decision the business has to make, because it's only a violation when the person's under 21 years old. So you can't use it as a defense. If the person's 23 years old and you accept a Connecticut driver's license, then there is no violation there. But nonetheless, if it's an out-of-state ID, you do accept it at your own risk, and I want to make sure that's clear. Attorney Fallon, do you have anything to add?
All set. It covers it.
Overservice. So as everyone can imagine, is the ABCC gets a lot of complaints, and every complaint that our ABCC enforcement division gets is investigated. However, some go to the top quicker than others. I just spoke about one. If there's a complaint or numerous complaints about a licensee selling to minors or delivering alcohol to minors, that's going right to the top. Same with overservice. If a establishment becomes well-known to service intoxicated people, that you can believe that an undercover ABCC investigator is going to visit that establishment. They may even order a drink and sit at the bar for hours, and they're going to watch everybody in that establishment, make sure people aren't showing signs of intoxication. They're not slurring their words. They're not acting loud and obnoxious. They're not swaying side to side. They're not having difficulty even standing. Because if they are, and then they order an alcoholic beverage and they're served, there's going to be a violation hearing before the ABCC. Now, there's a lot of confusion with regard to the 24J report and the 24J notices. We are separate. We are really secondary pieces with regard to the 24J notices and reports. That starts in the courts. So when someone is convicted or pleads continue without finding to an OUI operating under the influence in Massachusetts, they're asked under oath by the clerk magistrate where they had that last drink. If they name your establishment, that's entered by the court, and a copy is eventually, along with other agencies, is sent to us. Our chief investigator organizes this information. He tracks it all. So maybe, and I will admit, it's not always the most reliable information. We've seen times where a defendant has said they were at the Red Sox game and the Red Sox were in Toronto. But it is tracked nonetheless. And what I know our chief investigator does is, once there's been a few now, that there's a few notices from the same establishment, absolutely an ABCC investigator is going to be visiting that establishment. And that's really what that's used for. If there's a mistake, if you think that there is a mistake with regard to the notice you received, because you will receive the same notice we do, we can't correct it. I know we do get a lot of calls saying that this place was confused, we didn't serve this person. We can't correct that. I would maybe, they may not correct it either, but the courts is where I would suggest calling with that. But nonetheless, we do receive all that information, and it is tracked by our chief investigator, who does use it for investigation purposes. So bottom line, if you've received one, you might not see a visit from us, but if you've seen more than one, definitely expect an ABCC investigator to visit your establishment.
Can I jump in on that too? One important thing about this, one thing we have found in the trend, when you appear multiple times on this list, there's a problem. All right, so when you receive, basically what happens, the court notifies the ABC, they also notify, some courts also notify the local licensing authority and so forth. This is just a red flag letting you know that if it's multiple times, there's usually an issue. So if you think about it, how important it is I know everybody wants to make as much money as possible out there, but that extra drink you give to somebody, think about the headache it's going to cause. And it's important also when people come into your establishments, if you think they are intoxicated, to refuse service. There was an issue in Chelsea where a gentleman walked in to a licensed premises, ordered one beer, left there, and killed a 16-year-old girl. He was in that licensed premises 8 minutes, had one beer, but he was intoxicated from 3 other locations he had visited earlier. Who paid the price? At the end, it was the last place that he received the drink at. So this is how important it is and how much it is to refuse that drink if you think someone's intoxicated. Catherine?
Just to add on that, even if the ABCC doesn't take it up with the licensee, because that list does trickle down to the local board, the board could take up that issue as well and bring the licensee in to address that situation. So again, if ABCC, if they don't take it up, that doesn't preclude the board from taking it up if there's over service at a licensed establishment.
Very good. Next slide.
Thank you. And just to touch on what Ralph alluded to, there's obviously a lot of liability with regard to this issue, more than just your license potentially getting suspended. Licensees have a duty to protect their patrons from foreseeable harm. Serving someone who's intoxicated, and then what happens after could be a very obviously devastating to the people involved. Obviously, there can be loss of life, and then obviously what results from that is lawsuits and potentially losing your business. So no one wants to see that, any of that. So we'll move on to the next slide.
I think this one's,
Yes, I'm going to turn this slide over to Attorney Fallon and Lieutenant McCarthy.
all right, thank you. And this actually goes hand in hand with over serving as well. In Framingham, the rules and regulations have an official last call process. So first off, your hours of operation are as printed on your license. And if there's any change to that, as Mr. Sacramone explained, you're required to amend that. You cannot alter your hours of operation, both at the opening as well as the closing. In Framingham's rules and regulations, section 3 are the procedures. the last call has to be at least 15 minutes before your official closing hour. That doesn't mean you have to make a last call 15 minutes ahead of your closing. You could do the last call in your establishment 30 minutes ahead of your closing time if that's what procedure you have, but it can't be any later than 15 minutes before your official closing. After closing, all of the tables and the bars have to be cleared of all of the glasses and the bottles and the containers of alcohol within 30 minutes after your official closing hour. It is your obligation as a licensee to ensure that all the containers are cleared off and that all of your customers are off the premises by the official closing hour. So the licensee is also obligated to ensure that there's no sale of alcohol either before your official hours, opening hours, and after your closing hours. And ensure that your customers leave in an orderly fashion as part of the responsibility of the licensee. It's not just within the establishment, but it's also on the exterior, ensuring public safety, that everybody leaves, that there's no issues in the parking lot, on the sidewalk, out in front of your establishment, but leaving and exiting the premises in an orderly fashion. If you do have any questions about your opening and closing hours, or you want a question amending those, you should please direct those questions to the board, and certainly an amendment can be filed with the board. But again, it would not take place unless and until the board approves a change in your hours of operation in a formal vote of the board at a hearing. The other important thing is, even including in terms of over service, it's really your obligation to make sure that your staff not only knows the last call of the hours of operation process, but when service of alcohol has to stop, that your staff knows the rules of the board, that even you're in the training of over serving, your staff knows the signs of someone that is intoxicated and knows that they should not be serving that individual, even including because it's still not last call. So it's important for the licensee to make sure that your staff follows the procedures and also knows the signs of someone that's intoxicated so that they don't serve. And I don't know if Lieutenant, you have anything else you wanted to add in on this as far as Framingham's
Yeah, so I mean,
concerned?
just to add to that, like I indicated earlier, officers do check. They go around to establishments on a regular basis. They might not even come inside. Sometimes they'll pull the cruiser up out front and see if there's any customers in there. And if you're supposed to close at midnight, there's people in there at 12:30. They're gonna notify me, and that's gonna be an issue. Also, I'll get into investigations later on, but if you're supposed to close at midnight and there's a fight, inside at 12:15, 12:30, you're gonna have some explaining to do as to why customers are still inside, and that would be another, violation that would get added on. So most places don't wait. If it's very busy, most places don't wait till, say, you close at midnight, 11:45 to do last call, because they know it's going to take 10-15 minutes to get people out. So they might put last call maybe half an hour ahead and then try and shuffle people out, 10:15, so that way they're in compliance.
One other thing, Lieutenant McCarthy and Catherine, if I can add into it, and Catherine had talked about earlier, you're responsible and Kyle touched about the safety of your guests and any foreseeable action. One item that we do see a lot, if there is an altercation in on your licensed premises, it's best to use the police as partners with you, to reach out to them and call them. Don't take the two individuals and throw them outside and let them slug it outside, because you're still responsible. It's the best thing to do is to reach out to the police department, let them know there's an altercation, because sometimes it's not foreseen. There's nothing you can do about it if two people are end up all of a sudden going at it. But you want to make sure you control the situation, protect people inside and outside your licensed premises. So reach out to the police department. Just don't throw them outside and let it continue outside, because it's all going to come back to you. Thank you.
Just to add on to that, the rules and regulations say that you shall notify the police department immediately if there's something that needs particular attention. And some people think, oh, you know, maybe I don't want to do that because I'll get in trouble. Well, you know, I give establishments a lot of latitude to cooperate with us and call us for issues. And we will always find out. People will put stuff on social media, they'll email it to me. Other people will call and say, hey, there's a fight in the parking lot. So you're required to call us, and it's in your best interest to call us and notify us so that we can assist you with that. It looks beneficial on your part.
All right, anything else, Mr. Sacramone or Attorney Gill, anything else you wanted to add to this?
I did have a question.
Sure. Mr. Daly.
So we're getting lots of, well, not lots, but a few requests and questions about private parties, after hours parties, things like that. Is there a way to do that? I mean, we don't sell a lot of alcohol. We're kind of a different establishment, but obviously we have it for sale. And these are generally kids' parties with maybe adults having a couple of drinks or two. But is there a process to go through so that, you know, we close early, you know, whatever, say 8 o'clock? Could I do a party from say 8 to 10 o'clock? Is there a procedure for that? Or is that just not a possibility?
Well, the process there is you have whatever your official hours that the local board has approved. All right, and just say you originally came in because you recommend the hours to the town with your application or the municipality. So if you go in and you're chosen, you're gonna close at 8 o'clock on a Sunday night, we'll just pick that out.
Yeah.
All right, and that's part of your closing. Now, if you wanted to extend your hours for one weekend on a Sunday night from 8 to 10, you can go and ask the local board. It's their discretion to allow you to extend your hours. Like people do that for special events, like on New Year's Eve, they go to the local board, ask if they could have an extra hour of time. Than normally if they close at 1, could they go to 2 o'clock or something to that extent? It's all the discretion of the board. It's better to ask than go and do it without asking.
Sure.
So there is a procedure, but it's a discretion of the board.
Okay. All right, that works. Thank you.
Okay. All set. Any other questions? All right, so we'll move along to our next slide, which again has to do with the ability of inspectors to enter the premises. ABCC, police, fire, other city inspectors. They're all authorized to come into the licensed premises at any time to do an inspection, to check up on investigating violations or potential violations, to just do customary surveillance that typically is done. So it's important for all the licensees to not only be aware of this, but to make sure that your staff is aware of this and to be working in a cooperative and collaborative manner with inspectors who might, you know, want to ask questions or might have things that they're looking for or ask you about. I'm gonna also let Lieutenant McCarthy jump in on this one to give a little bit more input.
Yeah, so like I said, we do this on a regular basis. You know, anybody can go in there, Board of Health, Fire, us, any board in the city. So if a particular establishment was not allowing us entry, you know, potentially there's not only issues with the local board, there's also criminal charges. You know, 13863A be hindering a licensing investigation. That's a criminal charge. 13834 Bravo is anyone inside the establishment is obligated to produce identification. So any police officer walks in there, we can ask anyone for ID. And that's not for just for patrons. You're gonna bounce right at the door, he needs to identify themselves, things like that. I'll get into the investigations later, but you know, we do this on a frequent basis, and you know, sometimes, you know, maybe the bouncer at the door just is not aware of the law, so it's incumbent upon you as a manager and a person in charge of the establishment to let them know. And there's not too many issues with this, but there have been some in the past.
Mr. Sacramone?
Kyle, you want to jump in about hindering?
Sure, yes. As Lieutenant McCarthy stated, this is a law, and it's actually a criminal law. hindering an investigation, and it includes not just, it includes locking an ABCC investigator out or an authorized agent such as the police department. Also not giving information. If there's surveillance and you destroy it or decide not to give it for whatever reason, by the letter of the law in 63A, you are, you can be charged even criminally, not just before the local board or before the ABCC. I can say that if it is charged at the ABCC, the commission does take hindering, especially hindering an investigation seriously. I know I sound like a broken record, but a license is a privilege, not a right. So an ABCC investigator nor an authorized agent of the local board, such as Lieutenant McCarthy, does not need a warrant to enter your licensed establishment. They can go in and by restricting them in any way or not cooperating in any way, you could be in violation.
To give you an example how minor some hindering can be and how intensive it can be is if an investigator comes in or a police officer comes in and they ask you to unlock that door, the storage room door, and you refuse to do, that's hindering. All right, if they ask you to produce a record for you or a invoice showing where you purchased the alcohol from, that's hindering. We have had some severe occasions in other cities where there was a shooting that went on inside the facility. They locked the police department outside the front while people were laying wounded on the inside. So what do you think happened to those people's license when they impaired in front of the ABC? Their license was revoked because that was a very serious matter. So as what Carl and Lieutenant McCarthy is saying, it's serious from a very minor situation to a major. So we're here to help, as we stated, and ultimately, no matter what, you're going to be producing the information, either do a subpoena or you're going to be producing the information voluntarily. So it's better to get it all up front. Let's all work together and work through the situation.
And I'll just add to that too, something that, you know, not as extreme as that, but something less extreme. Investigator goes in, police officer goes in to investigate, asks the name of an individual that's working for your staff and they refuse to give their name. You know, those are the types of smaller things that are considered to be obstructing the investigation. So something that may not, I'm not comfortable giving you my name, even though they're a staff member. Those are the types of things that we want to avoid, you know, making sure that you and your staff are aware that they're, you know, they're required to participate and assist with this. Okay. So I think we can move on unless there's anything else, Lieutenant McCarthy, that you need to add to that. We'll do a little bit more discussion on some examples of other issues that Framingham sees, but as far as this, we just wanted to make sure the licensees are clear with regard to their obligation to allow investigators in. They don't need a warrant, as Attorney Gill explained. Are we good to move on?
That's all I have for now. Thank you.
All right, great. All right, and we talked about this next piece is the management ID cards, and this is under Framingham's rules and regulations. In Framingham, all managers and assistant managers are required to be registered with the Framingham Police Department prior to assuming duties. And of course, as management changes with your establishment and your approved managers change, that would be the time frame to modify those if those changes were approved and take place. The ID cards that have to be carried by the manager and assistant manager, either on their person or kept in a card file at the establishment. And you as the licensee have to keep a photocopy of all the ID cards on the premises. And that, Lieutenant McCarthy, anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, just to clarify, there's been a little confusion over this. We used to require under the regulations, police issued cards for everybody, from bouncers to servers to bartenders to everyone. And that was kind of inconvenient and kind of it was just extra logistics on everything. So right now, like we just talked about, it's only managers and assistant managers. So that card, it's a simple process. You come in, it's $20 to get the card. We print it out while you're here. All that does is it verifies your alcohol training. So let's say, for example, you have tips, okay? It expires in January of 2024. That card, we're gonna take a picture. It's, that card is specific to the establishment and your card will expire in January 2024. In terms of the other people working at the establishment, they simply need the training, such as tips or alcohol interventions, et cetera. There's a list online that we approve, but they just need the training. They don't need to come down and get the card. So it takes some burden off the establishment. And that training, you just need to keep on file. That way, if there is an issue and I investigate it, you can say, yep, this person has the training. You can show me the certificate and that's it.
Okay. I don't know if there's anything else, Mr. Sacramone or Attorney Gill, or we can move on.
I'm good on this.
Okay. All right, so now we're gonna actually turn it back over to Lieutenant McCarthy so that we can get into a little bit more detail about other issues that we see here in Framingham with licensees.
All right, so this is, information that I provided for the PowerPoint of problems and things that have come up over the last year and a half when I've been in this position. So obviously over serving, we talked about that. Now, in terms of these investigations, let me just run through exactly what you can expect. So the on-scene officer, let's say there's a fight, okay, at your bar, and you call, the officers come. The officers will start investigating this for me. Let's say it's 1 o'clock in the morning on Friday. I only work Monday through Friday, so they start doing things on scene. So some things they'll be asking you for. They'll be asking you, how long was a patron in the bar? Do you have cameras? Lieutenant McCarthy's going to need the videotape for the cameras. We'll need a bar tab, so we find out if the person was overserved or not. Now, the issue becomes if two people go into a bar, they each have one beer and they're not overserved, and they just all of a sudden don't think they like each other and get in a fight, and you call us, that's probably not going to result in a violation going to the board because the establishment potentially did not do anything wrong. People weren't intoxicated, and you can't predict what people's behavior is going to be. Now, if they walked in there at 11 o'clock and you served them, 5 beers from 11 to 12, and then they got in a fight, potentially that might be over-serving, and your over-serving contributed to their conduct and their getting into a fight. So that's some of the stuff the on-scene officer is going to ask you for. Also, when I follow up, if there's something significant, I'll be asking to interview your bartender who served them. Like I said before, we're making sure everyone was trained. I'll need cell phone numbers for, any of the staff there that I want to speak to. And, I need that, I'm not going to wait 3 weeks to get someone's cell phone number. That needs to be produced in a reasonable amount of time. And like I said, I take into consideration cooperation. If you make my job easy, things will go better. So that's kind of comes down to over-serving. So overcrowding, if let's say someone just falls down, they're not over-served, they just trip and fall and they hurt their knee or something. The fire department goes out, we go out, person gets transported. Let's say they weren't even drinking in there, okay? But we see that your establishment, it's going to be right on the wall, right on the license. Your occupancy permit says 150 people and you have 300 people in there. Well, now that's a serious problem. I don't need to talk about Coconut Grove or a Station nightclub or anything like that, but I think you know where I'm headed with this. That's a fire code violation. It's a building code violation. People die because of overcrowding and things like that. That's why the building department sets those numbers. So that's a serious offense. You want to avoid that. The third one, if you're promoting your establishment like a nightclub and you're having, dancing and lights and all that stuff, the nightclub definition, you can just Google it, falls under the building code. You need a specific building code regulations that allow you to do that. And it comes down to basically fire safety. So be careful of that. Don't be promoting dancing and nightclub and stuff like that if your license says you're a restaurant. Don't amend the alcohol license. If you don't do that, so say for example, like we talked about the outdoor seating. Let's say you put an addition on and or you have let's say you have a second floor. Your alcohol license indicates that you're gonna be serving alcohol down in the restaurant, but you have a second floor that you build out And you get the, let's say you get the building permits and everything, and you're gonna have it as a, small function room. You can't serve alcohol up there unless you go through the proper procedure to amend that license with the ABCC and the local board. So be aware of that. We talked about training staff on the police, the right to enter and inspect and all that. So, like I said, officers have run into things where, they've been investigating something even simple and the bartender says, well, I'm not giving you my name. And the officers try to educate them on, they have to, we just talked about some of the laws that you could be responsible for criminally and before the board. So just make sure your staff knows what the law is. And like I said, if you cooperate, it's just better. So that's a little bit about that. But if there's an issue, call us. And that's the first thing I look at if I come in on a Monday morning, there's been a fight. So the way I get my information, officers email me. Patrons will send me videos of things going on. Every shift, the supervisor of the shift, so there's 3 shifts a day, they send out an email with the highlights of the shift. If there's anything, let's say there's an OUI. Well, I look at the report. Was he coming from one of the Framingham establishments? And then I follow up on that. Was there a fight? Was there a medical? Anything at one of the local license establishments? I get that information. I follow up on it. So you can just expect that. But the first thing I look at is who called. Did the establishment call? So if the establishment called, right off the bat, they were trying to do the right thing and ask for our assistance. And the fact is, maybe someone got overserved. There was a fight. Yeah, potentially you might go to the board for violation for that. But if you're cooperative, I will indicate that to the board. And if you called us, I will also indicate that to the board. If you did not call and you tried to hide it and there was a fight in the parking lot and 4 of your bartenders were out there fighting with people, trying to control it and no one called, that it looks like you're trying to hide stuff. So just call us if there's a problem.
I'll just add in too, similar to what Lieutenant McCarthy said about building on a second floor. Let's say you have approval for outdoor service, you have a license that includes outdoor service, of 8 tables, and you decide to pull 4 tables away and set up a stage there for entertainment. That's going to be a problem unless you have sought the approval in advance and gotten enforcement officials' approval in advance for the safety of that, and the board's approval in advance for that would be considered an amendment to your existing license. So it's basically anything like that that can become an issue of compliance, or it could become an issue of violation of the licensing rules if you're not making sure that you petition for that in advance, seek an amendment to your license in advance. And don't do that thinking it's going to go through and you're going to be accepted. Wait until everything has been approved. So that's another issue on the flip side of just expanding and not being able to serve. You have to file an amendment to your license and get that vetted by the board and local enforcement officials before you go ahead and you proceed with it. Are we good with this one? Mr. Sacramone, Attorney Gill?
I'm good.
Anything else? Good. All right, and we'll move on to our next slide, which is alcohol service. So in Framingham, under the rules, all of your alcohol servers must complete an alcohol training program. And they're issued certificates for completion of that, and the managers have to keep copies of those training certificates on the premises. And under the law, anybody that serves alcohol must be 18 years of age or older, or anyone that handles alcohol, bringing alcohol to this table, selling it, serving it, removing it from a table. They must be 18 years of age or older. Mr. Sacramone, anything else? That's pretty specific, but is there anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think you covered it.
All right. Okay, so if there's no other questions, Lieutenant McCarthy, anything else?
No, nothing on this slide.
All right, so we're gonna move on to club licensing, and I'm gonna turn it back over to Mr. Sacramone.
Uh, The next area I want to talk about is a club license. Now, a club license is very unique. It follows the exact same rules as any other Section 12 on-premise consumption license, but with one caveat to it. A club license is for members and guests of members only. You are not open to the public. If you are engaging in advertising in the paper, holding karaoke nights to the public, that is not what this license is about. It is for members and friends of members, and it runs under the full discretion of the local licensing authority. They can add any condition they want to the license, which means how you conduct your business, how you accept visitors in, if they're requiring a visitor's log to sign in, that the visitor can only remain on the premises with a member that has escorted him in, etc. All that falls under the local board's jurisdiction. But one thing to clear, a club license is not a 24-hour-a-day license. You have opening, you have closing hours, you follow the exact same rules as set forth under Chapter 138 and also the policies and procedures of the city of Framingham. We have this issue across state where people just think a club license, even though you may close at 1 o'clock, people could stay in there and drink overnight. That is not what it's about. All right, if you are conducting fundraisers or you're renting the halls out to raise money for the organization or for the nonprofit, you work with the town on getting permission to do that. But remember, you have the exact same standards of every other licensee. You are not open to the public. If you go back and you read about Section 12 and what a club license is about, it's really with reference to fraternal organizations, examples, Knights of Columbus, Elks, Sons of Italy, also members of the different types of military clubs from VFWs right down the line, from members and guests of members operating as a private club. So if anyone has any questions on that, please feel free. You can give us a call after. I don't really want to get in dispute of what your activities are at a club, but it's very plain and simple. You have the exact same rules and you are not open to the public. It's only for members and guests of members.
Okay. All
Any
right,
other questions? Okay.
we'll move on to the next slide. So these are just for all of the attendees for purposes of giving you resources, additional resources online. The Framingham Board of License Commissioners resources are available. You can click on the links. This training will also be available. If you want to have your staff training, you can find this on the city's website. And Framingham's rules and regulations, which you are charged with the responsibility to be aware of and ensure your staff is aware of, are online as well. The latest adopted, the link for the latest adopted is included and it's on our website. And we'll move on to the next, which is the ABCC's resources online. They're in multiple languages available to you. The ABCC website link is there, and there's also a frequently asked questions page, as frequently asked questions link of frequently asked questions that the ABCC receives in multiple languages. Mr. Sacramone, anything else?
Sure. I'd like to turn this part of the presentation over to the Deputy Executive Director, Ryan Melville, who'll show you the website navigation and where to find the FAQs, because they're fantastic aid over there to help you. Ryan?
I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so that Ryan can share on his screen. Okay.
Very good. Yeah, I'm just going to show the website. This will be quick. The ABCC, as you can see, we have our website. You can find us by Googling Mass Alcohol Beverage Control Commission. We put a lot of work into this. Obviously, the ABCC doesn't just deal with retail licenses at the local level. We have our state licenses, and then we also have you at the retail license level. So there's a lot of information on our page. One place that Ralph had talked about earlier is if you have to make a change in your license, if you're amending your manager, if you're adding ownership, any sort of or alterations of premise, you would go to our website and you would select retail beverage, alcohol retail beverage licenses, and then amend your retail license. This would give you the various options that you would select. The most common that we receive is a change of manager. As you see, when you select that, it brings you this page, which gives some information. At the bottom, it gives you a very high level process of how the approval process will go. And then if you select the actual amendment application, what do you see? The first group of things you see at the top are what's required. So just follow that. That is just to ensure that you as the licensee, the local licensing board and the ABCC are all operating off the same requirements. You'll see there's a number of different types of changes that you could make. You would select the one that best suits what you're intending to do. Any specific questions about ownership or how you should organize your ownership, that's something you would direct to your own legal counsel to ensure that your business operation is operating as you intended, at least the organization. The other point we want to bring up that's relatively new is we've done our frequently asked questions, and we have them in multiple languages. As you can see here, a list of the various languages. This is based off of past interactions we've had in trainings with other cities and towns, including Framingham, where we have pointed to the frequently asked questions as being a really important tool for you as the licensee and anybody that's involved in the alcohol industry. As you'll see here, either all the questions that we've obtained over the last 5 years, the commonly asked questions, or the flavor of that question you will find here. These are really helpful for questions that you might have as the owner or an operator of a license, or your staff might have, specifically in off hours. So they like the weekends or after 5 o'clock when you can't get somebody here at the ABCC or at the local board available, and you have a question about how to operate your business. You will see there is an entire area dedicated to operating the business and the various questions and answers that we typically get for all types of licenses, from on-premise to package stores. This is a really good tool. This is something that you should use. You should have available to you as the operator of a license, or your staff should also have available, and they should utilize this. Additional to that, we have our publications that we publish. These are like our advisories. One of the main ones and the issues I get called most often is the holiday compliance, is the happy hour regulation. So if somebody either you or somebody that works in your business has an idea for some sort of what they would like to do to increase business, has some kind of unique idea, you would want to take a look at this to ensure that it's in compliance. We put this out annually, it's available, and this is the happy hour compliance. Outside of that, you just as a basic resource, if you have any other questions and you needed to reach out to our agency, there's a ABCC staff directory on the main page, along with other resources that are available under ABCC publications, enforcement division, and areas like that. If you have any other questions, we're always available for you, and I'll hand it back to Ralph. And I will stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Ryan. On behalf of the ABC, that concludes our presentation. I'm going to turn it back to Lieutenant McCarthy and Attorney Fallon. I just want to thank everybody for their time. If anyone had a problem asking a question, we'll stay on and answer whatever questions you got. You can feel free to shoot us an email or shoot it to Lieutenant McCarthy or Attorney Fallon, and then we can get you the answer back later on, whatever it is for you. I know you're busy. You have to get back to your businesses, but we want to thank everybody for the effort of attending today. And remember, it's all about compliance. We want to see you be successful. Lieutenant McCarthy.
Thanks. Framingham Fire, did you want to add anything about some of the issues that you might run into? I did talk about overcrowding and things like that, but I don't know if you want to add anything to that. I think you're on mute. Jim, I'll give you a second on that. I'm gonna take a audience question. Mr. Onspot from Framingham Liquors, do you have a question for us? Just want to just take that off mute.
Oh.
There you go.
One question that I have is also, one of the things that never is instructed to us, I believe, is what do we do with a person who comes in with a false ID? Or what kind of repercussions do they face in the long run? The rules and regulations say that if you come in and falsify ID and you this, that, the other thing, it can be fines up to $300 or whatever. I've never heard of any enforcement of that. And that's why I think whenever you send in an operative and they don't have an ID and they walk out, that's fine. But what if you've asked for an ID and they produce something and you believe that it's false? We collect them and inevitably we'll hand them over to the police. But what should we do at the moment and we receive that? And what happens to the individual so that we can get, if you will, a record out there? If you say that we're in a college town, so students in the college and the colleges know what liquor stores they can go to because maybe they don't ask for IDs or etc. But we've never heard of anybody suffering the repercussions of a false ID. And is there any information on that? And there used to be cops in shop that we don't see much of that, maybe due to financial constraints. But that is a preliminary, at least, help for us. If they were to ask a person in line that looked younger for the ID even before they got to the counter and they didn't have an ID, then isn't there something that's done to them? That's just a general question. If they had any information on it.
So in other words, you're basically saying when someone who presents a false ID, you're confiscating the ID and turning it over to the police. And you're wondering then what happens to that individual after you've sent them on their way. You're not going to serve alcohol or, excuse me, sell alcohol to them. And you've sent them on the way. You're wondering whether or not that individual is then prosecuted for attempting to. I think that's the question. And where you can find that information. But I don't know if anyone wants to jump in, but if you've prevented the sale, I don't think they can. I don't know what criminal charges could result from that, but I don't know if there's anything to
I
add.
can just jump in from the ABCC's perspective. Now, our commission in and of itself, they regulate licensees. Now, our investigators do have certain powers on licensed premises, and there are I think 2 different laws. One's a felony, one's a misdemeanor for using a fraudulent identification. So the individuals are subject to criminal penalties. I can say that our commission, when there is a hearing, they do regulate the licensees themselves when the commission has a hearing concerning sale to a minor. It's not, we don't conduct criminal hearings or criminal court here at the ABCC.
I don't know, Lieutenant McCarthy, if there's any kind of a list that you keep, not, of course, we can't talk about minor prosecution of minors, but is there any type of list that you might keep of prosecuting someone who's tried to pass a fake ID or?
I don't really have a list. Usually, the best course of action is, hey, buddy, I don't think this is real. You want me to call the cops or you're gonna leave? And if we go out there, usually they leave and then it's fake. But I mean, basically the bottom line is preventing the sale. So if you did that, obviously there's a lot of attorneys on here, and I can tell you from my experience, things go through the court not very swiftly. So by the time something goes to court, I'm sure they're not going to get the max penalty for a 20-year-old trying to buy beer. The penalty, this isn't a felony level offense. So typically, sometimes court isn't always the best option. I mean, they really don't like us arresting young kids. That's just, the court does not like that. So we typically can deal with that out of court. But yeah, your responsibility your acute responsibility is to prevent the sale if you think that ID is not valid. And then just call us, and that, at least that will eliminate it for a short time. But you know, the way the courts are, that probably, you know, if they had a real bad attitude, I mean, they could talk themselves into getting arrested, but that's probably, it's probably not going to go to court. We try and handle things out of court and prevent that from happening in the future. Sometimes court isn't always the answer, but it is a crime. They can't get charged with it. If it's a fake ID, say it's an altered mass license, you know, then that would be a felony. But again, we try and look out for public safety, and it's not always, you know, about charging people. We don't charge everyone with everything.
But if you prevent the sale, certainly that's a win for public safety right there, so.
Right.
We have another hand raised, Sal from Railroad 6.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, Lieutenant McCarthy. I just wanted some clarification with respect to the alcohol tips card. So if I understand correctly, it's when they take the tips class, it's no longer required that they have to go in and take a photo ID. Is that correct?
Yes, so in your case, you're the manager, so you need the photo ID, and the
Yeah.
assistant manager would need the photo ID.
Okay.
In terms of photo IDs, that's it. And the purpose of the photo ID is, you know, let's say there's a new manager at your establishment. The board won't give the license till you have the photo ID, because the purpose of the photo ID is to verify that that manager has the alcohol training. Let's say, so we're using tips as an example because that one's fairly popular. It's online. So let's say your license goes for, you know, a couple of years and expires, you know, January 2nd, 2024. When you come in for the ID, your ID will expire January 2nd, 2024. So just the managers and assistant managers need that card. It's just a way to make sure that we ensure that managers and assistant managers have the training. In terms of your staff, they need the training. They don't need the card. And then you just need to keep that training on file and just make sure that it doesn't expire.
Okay, and I have one more question with respect to that. I know historically you had to take a in-class present, like a, you know, alcohol or Ventons used to perform classes.
Right.
Is that changed? Can they use a, like ServSafe does it, but they do online? Are those classes acceptable now, or does that have to be an in-person class?
No, it used to be in person, but you know, like everything, like this particular seminar used to be in person, but times have changed, and you know, a lot of people do the tips there. Just make sure on the licensing webpage for the city, there is an approved list. There's a handful of companies that do it.
Okay.
And you know, you don't, the alcohol interventions, they do the classroom stuff. A lot of people, they like the in-person. That way they make sure people are paying attention, type of thing, because it is your license at stake.
Right.
But no, the online is acceptable, and there is a list online on that webpage to indicate what's acceptable.
All right, thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? I don't see any. Oh, no, that's.
Kelsey
Mr.
Roth, Exhibit
Mr.
A.
Roth, yes.
Hi, I actually have two questions. One is regarding the manager's ID. Is the process the same where we fill out that same form that you know, that we used for the alcohol server IDs, then make an appointment at the police station and things like that? Or is there a different process? I didn't see anything on the website.
So I can answer that. So we're in the process of, the city is updating their entire website, so we're getting some more, all the pages are gonna be a little more up to date. But basically, you just call up, make an appointment, and you can come in. We do everything by appointment for that. That way we get you in and out. You don't have to wait, you know, because we don't want it to be, you know, 20 people in there. You have to wait an hour. So you just call up the records department and you make an appointment, and you come in with your alcohol training certificate and $20 for the prints. And we just do it right then. And your, like I said, your card expires when your alcohol training expires. And that's pretty much it. It's pretty quick.
Okay. My second question is, a new brewery reached out to me asking a question about a Massachusetts regulation that they heard about that required draft line cleaning twice a week by a third-party company. And I couldn't find any regulation like this. The only thing I could find was a Boston Globe article from 2016 that referenced this, but didn't have any citation. Is this actually a thing, or is this just a rumor?
I can just answer my perspective. I'm not aware of that. I can certainly find out. That might be a Board of Health issue, but I'm not aware. I don't know if anyone else has any info on that. That's more of a like a safety sanitation thing, but I can find out.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? I don't see any other hands, or I don't see any other hands raised. So with that, well, oh, one more. I'm sorry. Aaliyah Inc. has a hand raised. Go ahead. Hi, welcome.
Hi, my name is Roman. I'm from Bazaar West Supermarket. I do have a question. Can you please clarify for us again? Was it distracted for a second? So now manager and assistant manager could take just online course, right? And then go to police and get an ID.
Yeah, so everyone at the establishment needs training. So if you have someone, if you have a cashier, I believe that you have registers at your establishment. So anyone who's verifying ID at the register needs that alcohol training. So everyone needs alcohol training and who's verifying ID for a sale. The managers and assistant managers are the only people who need to come down in the police department and get that card. So everyone needs training, and just the manager and assistant manager needs the card.
So they could take a course right online.
Yeah, so we have the approved courses on the licensing webpage. Like we just talked about, there are classes that are online, and those are acceptable as long as they're on the list. Most places have the employee take those before they start working. You need to have the person take that class within 30 days of being hired. But we would recommend prior to starting, because if they make a sale and they cover how to check for fake IDs and things like that, and in terms of bars, signs of intoxication, things like that. So if you're putting someone out there who doesn't have the training and you say, oh yeah, in 3 weeks we'll give it to you, now they're less educated and there's more of a chance there might be a violation, and then that's your reputation on the line. So
all right, thank you.
There are two separate requirements. One is for the training and the certification, including on the online courses. You'll be able to produce a certification after completion. And the second requirement is the ID card for the manager and the assistant manager of the establishment. So those are two separate requirements. The certifications for the alcohol training program stay at the licensed premises. And the other requirement for ID cards, that goes through the police department. The establishment works with the police department to have those completed, and they keep copies of those as well at the establishment. Does anyone have any other questions? I think that's it.
So I just wanted to add a couple more things. I talked to Deputy Chief Ahern from the fire department. He was having some issues with his microphone. So, some common things that him and I talk about are that, they go in there, like the example I gave for a medical, and it's overcrowded. That's a significant issue. Your establishment is overcrowded, there's a safety issue like that, the police department or fire department can immediately shut down your business, and everyone will have to leave. In terms of some entertainment and building permits, like if you want to get a stage, you want to have live music, things like that, all that goes to Board of Health, myself, and the fire department to sign off. And we look at it from public safety, and same thing the fire department does. So we make sure it's not going to block the doors. Some things that the fire department will go out and do an on-site inspection for something like that, and they do regular inspections anyhow for fire alarms and things like that on an annual basis. So they will be checking. Let's say you wanted an area to put some people singing live music. They will go out there and inspect that and make sure that if the fire alarm goes off, the live music stops automatically. There's some safety issues like that they'll make sure before you are allowed to perform those activities. So if everyone wants to get a pen or a pencil, I'll give you my information. I apologize for the chat screen. That was That worked out well last year. I did not realize that the city had disabled that, so I apologize for that. We'll have to do a workaround for that in the future. So again, it's Lieutenant Tom McCarthy. It's 508-532-5917. 532-5917. So I work Monday through Friday during the day. So if you have something that needs more immediate attention on a Saturday night, call the regular dispatch number and they can deal with it. But if you have any questions about the regulations or laws, or like I said, any of the other things I do, sex offenders, firearms, field training, anything like that, you can let me know. I'll give you my email as well. It's TWM Tango Whiskey Mike at framinghamma.gov. TWM at framinghamma.gov. And one other thing I mentioned, I am taking attendance here. There's a significant amount of attendees that I don't know what establishment you're from. So if you're on here and your establishment name is not with your sign-in name, I don't know who you are. So if you could please call me at that number, the 532-5917, and let me know what establishment you're from, so that way I can give you credit for this. And Kelsey, if you want to give me a call as well, I can find out about I'll do some more research on clearing the draft, so that way I get your direct number. That's all I have for now.
Okay.
Any more questions from the audience?
Question, I don't know who this is, but I see another hand raised here. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Kunj. I'm calling in from Super Wine Vault in Framingham. I just didn't get the number that the lieutenant.
Yeah, so I'll give it to you again. Next year, we'll put it in the, if the chat's not up, we'll put it right in the presentation. But also, this presentation is recorded. So if it's your first time coming to this seminar, you probably have about 12 pages of notes, and you might want to review something. So if you go on the licensing, City of Framingham licensing website, on the left is a tab, Annual Alcohol Seminars. You can check last year's. This year will be up in a few days, and also the one 2 years back. So it's Lieutenant Tom McCarthy, 508-532-5917.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. I think we are done, and we just again want to thank the ABCC for your help presenting this training, the chair, Attorney Gill, our director and executive director that joined us to help us with this training. We really appreciate your help and assistance in helping get our licensees up to date on all of these matters.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.